Active shooter prevention and survival. Why solutions can't differ based on age. What I'm saying here is that we should be teaching everyone, regardless of age, what it takes to win and go home. Yes, even 5-year-olds in kindergarten. Shocking? Stay with me and I'll explain the problem and, even more importantly, what needs to be done to correct the problem. It's time to become violence proof, and it's time to make our kids and schools violence proof. If a fire starts in a school building or any other building for that matter, it's going to consume everything and everyone in its path with no regard for the age of the person in its path. This means that whether you're 5 or 50, if you don't get out of the building, you will surely die. So, this means that the solution to staying secure and surviving a fire is the same whether you're 5 or 50. And in the case of a fire, we teach people, regardless of age, the resolve without hesitation. Get out of the building at any cost as quickly as you possibly can. We have no concern about scaring younger kids. And then we even go a step further. We teach them how to get out of the building if there are challenges to do so. And we do it without hesitation, without concern for scaring them, regardless of age. We have no problem teaching them what to do, even if they're on fire, something that would be extremely painful and a horrifying way to die. And it's horrifying sight to see someone on fire. In my opinion, dying in a fire would be far worse than being shot by a bullet. Yet, we teach them regardless of how horrific and terrifying being in a fire may be. Why do we teach them about such a horrifying threat without concern for scaring them? Because we know if we don't, and our kids find themselves in a building that's on fire, we want them to have the absolute best chance to come home safely and securely. We spend time and money on fire prevention and training to survive in businesses and schools nationwide. And in fact, it's required by law. We're doing what it takes to prevent and survive fires. In the case of violence, however, we withhold potentially life saving information and skills because depending on the age, we don't want to scare them or we don't want them to know that there are bad people and things that may want to and will hurt them. But guess what? There are. Here's another fact. Fire prevention typically takes precedent over prevention and survival of acts of violence. Let me give you an example. There are doors in buildings that cannot be secured going in one given direction to ensure that people are able to escape in the event of a fire. But during an active shooter incident, it could actually save lives if the ability to lock that door in that direction existed. So, which wins out? Fire prevention prohibits an ability to lock that door in the direction that could save lives during an act of violence. Now, here's the fact. We are far more likely to find ourselves in an act of violence than we are a fire. And it's not even close. Just do the research on how many people die victims of acts of violence in schools and businesses versus that of fire. I'd bet that you can surmise the results of that research without even doing it. So there are times when our efforts to secure people against fire, something that is extremely unlikely to happen, contribute to victim counts in acts of violence. But the Department of Justice and other agencies and professionals who are called on to ensure the security of our kids in schools just don't see this type of critical stuff. Now, let's look at an active shooter incident versus that of a fire. Like a fire, if an active shooter victimizes a school, they will kill everyone they can, regardless of age. So, whether you're 5 or 50, if you're accessible to the threat, you will likely be a target of that threat and may be killed. This means that, like fire, that the resolve to win and go home is the same whether you're 5 or 50. But in the case of an act of violence, we seem to think it's okay to give the knowledge and proficiency to survive to everyone, but only down to a certain age. We think that, for example, we can't teach what it really takes to win and go home to anyone under, let's say, 10, but maybe 8, 7, 6. So, regardless of the fact that anyone under these ages requires the same resolve as anyone over these ages, we don't give them what they need because, well, I'm not sure why. Likely because we think that not scaring them or them not knowing that there are bad people and things in the world, again, people and things that may want to and will hurt them, is more important than giving them a chance to win and go home. And the reason we think this is okay is because, well, It's the foundation of the foundation of true security because we truly don't believe anything will ever happen to them. Because if we truly believe that something could happen, I promise you, every parent in school would give them what they need to prevent and survive without any regard for their age. Now, let me ask you a question if you're a parent. If, God forbid, you were ever informed that your child was killed in an act of violence, would you rather be told that they died fighting for their lives or that they died rolled up in a fetal position or hiding in a corner just waiting their turn? I know the answer to this because it's been 100% unanimous that parents would want their kids fighting to survive, regardless of their age. But they never have this chance because we don't teach them what it takes because we're too worried about their mental health or scaring them. Here's the deal kids are not afraid. And I'm going to illustrate this with a really short story. I was recently in a classroom full of teachers discussing active shooter protocol, their roles, their responsibilities, and what their children needed to do, and on and on. I noticed that one of the teachers was crying, so I asked her what was wrong. She went on to explain that this was a scary topic for her and her kids, and that it's not something we should have to be doing. Well, the answer hit me out of nowhere, and this is what I said to her in response. I said, we've trained thousands of school students nationwide from pre-K to university age, and not one time in thousands and regardless of their age has even one of them cried. Not a single one. What this tells me is that we are taking our possibly tainted views, thoughts, fears, and concerns about acts of violence, and we're projecting them onto our kids. This is not only dangerous, but it's wrong. Here's the deal. Our kids are not fearful of learning of the threat or the resolve unless we make them fearful. Now, next question. Is it fair to the kids who are under whatever our predetermined age of inappropriateness for training is to not be given what may be necessary to survive if they need to? I say absolutely not. Now, I know that younger age children may not be capable physically or mentally to do what's necessary to win and go home, but I know for a fact that they won't if we don't at least provide them with those options. Here's my final thought for this training session. If we can properly secure kids of any age in classrooms, we can teach and even demonstrate that if a threat is attempting to breach their stronghold, even at the youngest of ages, the threat will not be successful. In fact, it would be almost impossible for them to do so. Again, almost impossible. But instead, we teach them to get into a predetermined corner, even without knowing the details of what the circumstances will be. And we teach them to sit down and be quiet. That's great as long as the threat doesn't breach their stronghold. If they do, the results are going to be dire as we see in incident after incident. It's time to start thinking outside the box. It's time to start looking elsewhere for answers to resolve this problem of acts of violence because doing the same thing over and over again is not going to improve results. We have the answers to surviving and even stopping active shooter incidents almost completely, and we will provide them to you through time and different lessons. If you found this information to be helpful, please make sure that you hit the subscribe button, like it, and share it with as many people as possible. See you next time.